have a ring contingent here of 11 people, at least, who came in 2 cars tonight.
Yes.
Mostly because of Dr. Wong, I guess.
Yes.
And anyway, our next speakers, before I introduce him, we're having on June 17th, third Thursday, Gary Gordon, who's going to be talking on something similar to the title of New Treatments for Chronic Diseases. Gary Gordon is one of probably the top 10 doctors in the United States in alternative medicine. He's a co-founder of the American College of the
Advancement of Medicine.
Advancement in medicine.
American College for the Advancement of Medicine, and he practices in Arizona. He used to be in California, but they couldn't do certain things, and he's in Arizona now, near Phoenix. And he's got the biggest websites that coordinates with other doctors, runs conferences every month all over the world, and very well known. So he's going to be here June 17th. And on July 15th, we have an unusual dentist, the temporary title, Connecting Airway Interference Fields to Cure Diseases. You may have heard last time, we heard of a Dr. Robson, who's done this similar thing, and he's in Tacoma, Washington, and James is nearby, who has helped people through pushing their jaws forward, allowing oxygen to go down their throats, to do things like cure multiple sclerosis, sleep apnea, like somebody had 25 years, couldn't get a night's sleep, and the night after he put the appliance in, he was sleeping normally again, and many other things like that. It was impossible to believe, except that 10 of us here in this group went to the conference in San Francisco last month, and we saw all the patients. There were 5 of them that had gotten this treatment. So we're getting our local doctor, dentist, who's doing this in Alameda in July. And in August, Tom Levy is coming back, the guy who wrote the textbook on vitamin C. And after his lecture here, it became #1 on the self-publishing bestseller list in the country for 12 months because of the contacts he had with Gary Gordon and Julian Whitaker and others to bring back the popularity of vitamin C that it should have had. And the interesting subject he's talking about is death by calcium, the toxicity of osteoporosis therapy in conventional medicine. So that ought to be and that's his new book title. And in September, we're having Frank Schellenberger, another one of the top 10 in the country, on mitochondria, energy production and measurement. He's a big energy measurement or energy doctor, and he has practice in Nevada, and several people here have gone to see him. So anyway, let me introduce Dr. Wong, who is World Sport Medicine Hall of Fame member. And he's a classical naturopath, a PhD exercise physiologist, certified athletic trainer, certified sports medicine trainer, Albright Catholic priest, health fitness consultant, and professional member of the Texas State Naturopathic Medical Association. He's had 25 years professional experience in natural health as applied to sports medicine and rehabilitation, for the last 12 devoted almost exclusively to chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. He's authored books which he forgot to bring on natural healing. His first was titled 10 Natural Treatments You Haven't Heard of Till Now. And then he wrote the best natural sports medicine book ever. And there's one on male sexual performance and anti-aging. He taught physical medicine at Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. He's taught Kung Fu for more than 20 years. And I think I'll skip the rest of this, except he was inducted into the 1993 into the Martial Arts Hall of Fame as Wing Chun Kung Fu Instructor of the Year.
Thank you. Thank you all for inviting me down. Thank you all for being here. You know, it always kind of tickles me to hear people introduce me. I was standing in the back of a conference room in Nevada, and there's this one old fella telling some other guy, yeah, Dr. Wong was this and Dr. Wong was that, and he was really super. And I'm going, It's being kind of sheepish the way I am. Gee, thanks. But is that really me? we're going to talk about systemic enzymes, which is something that not very well understood, especially here in the States. Many folks, docs and other biochemical professionals, are still in denial that it even works. We're going to go over where it started, what it is, what it can do. Systemic enzyme therapy basically began in 1912 with a Scottish physician named Dr. John Beard. Dr. Beard realized that his pancreatic cancer patients were not creating any pancreatic juices. So he summarized that there was something missing from that the pancreatic juices had that could help the patients fight off their cancers. So he, of course, living in Scotland, you've got sheep everywhere, almost like New Zealand. He would take fresh extracts of sheep pancreas, feed it to his patients, and he had a fairly high remission rate. Now, those of you who are docs out there know that the remission rate from pancreatic cancer is 0. We'll get to that in just a second. When his experiments were redone in London, they used preserved and older sheep pancreas extract, and of course it didn't work. They didn't know about enzymes back then. His work was scoffed down. Beard basically kind of went off into the sunset and disappeared. World War I came and everyone forgot about his work. Okay, World War I is now over. And there's an MD with 7 PhDs named Dr. Max Wolf, who is teaching medicine at Rutgers and researching at Columbia University. He picks up where Beard left off. And from the 1920s through about 1973, when Dr. Wolf passed away, he did the greatest body of research on systemic enzymes. He was the one who proved that an orally administered systemic enzyme can be absorbed. I have to say, for the skeptics out there, there are now over 200 peer-reviewed studies on the absorption and therapeutic action of orally administered systemic enzymes. That the enzymes can be absorbed orally is not in question anymore, except for here in the States. There is now 40 years of clinical evidence. Everything from use in emergency rooms in Munich to sports medicine centers in East Germany and the old Soviet Union to daily therapeutic use in doctors' offices throughout Europe and Asia, showing that orally administered systemic enzymes are absorbed, do have a therapeutic action, and do indeed work. And for those of you who are still skeptical out there about something about the size of an enzyme being absorbed without being broken down, everyone says, well, enzyme's too big a protein to be absorbed whole. You break it down into its component proteins and it doesn't work anymore. Okay, bright lights. Tell me why salmonella, which is 5 times larger than the largest enzyme, could be absorbed but the enzymes can't. Think about that one. I stopped a MD, PhD researcher cold in his tracks on that one. One time he just kind of sat there and pondered. Then I said, told him where to go find the studies on PubMed, and I told him where to go find the studies on the European sites, and he was more or less placated and happy after that. All right, Dr. Max Wolf is the fellow who figured out what we all learned in physiology, that old age begins at 27. Problem is, our physiology profs didn't tell us why, but Max Wolf knew why. His work was carried on by Dr. Karl Ransberger, who was an associate of Dr. Wolf, and Dr. Ransberger went on to start his own enzyme company in Germany and carried on even more research on everything from nephrology, which is kidney disease, to anti-aging. 1973, 1974 comes around and we have Dr. William Kelly, who's a dentist here in the States, who had an 86% remission rate on pancreatic cancer using systemic enzymes, coffee enemas, and a few other things. His work was scoffed at. A young researcher named Nicholas Gonzalez from NYU gets sent to Dr. Kelly's clinic to debunk Kelly's work. Dr. Gonzalez finds out that indeed, Dr. Kelly's right. It's working. 86% remission rate, like a charm. Dr. Kelly's wife dies under mysterious circumstances. He gets hounded out of the country, lives in Mexico, lives in New Zealand. His work basically gets covered and glossed over for the better part of 20, 30 years. Dr. Gonzalez, when he gets fully into practice, begins to do Dr. Kelly's work, a variation of it. Up at Sloan Kettering. Gets scoffed at, gets criticized, but it works. Now we come to the late 20th century. Most of the systemic enzyme blends that have been out there are based on Dr. Wolf's original work, which is a combination of animal enzymes, pancreatin, trypsin, and chymotrypsin, along with the vegetable and plant enzymes of bromelain and papain from papaya and pineapple. And for years and years, every systemic enzyme blend, no matter who made it, was a copy of this particular formula, a clone of this particular formula. Time marches on. And now we have systemic enzyme blends based on based on serrapeptase, based on nattokinase, based on lumbokinase, some of them even based on urokinase, although I'll tell you a little secret about urokinase. It takes 3,000 gallons of urine to make 45 milligrams of urokinase. At present, there is a Japanese company collecting the urine of 4.5 million soldiers of the People's Liberation Army in China. I'm sorry, but I ain't taking no enzymes made from somebody's tinkle. I don't care how they purify it. So, the serrapeptase-based enzymes proved to be so effective that they're basically turned into pharmaceuticals. Now let me tell you the big secret about how enzymes work. When you put an enzyme blend together, you can lob a bunch of these enzymes together. I can take pancreatin, I can take bromelain, I can take papain, and blend them all together, and they won't do much. And I'll talk about the 5 actions of enzymes in just a minute. They won't do much because of one trick that Dr. Karl Ronsberger taught me when I was studying with him in Munich. He said that the effects of a systemic proteolytic enzyme are spurred by the strongest fibrinolytic enzyme. So the enzyme that can eat through scar tissue best turns into the synergistic, let's call it leader. It creates the synergy between all the other enzymes, brings them all together to work towards a common goal. Each of them have their own areas of what they do, but there's a lot of overlap between these enzymes. That answer arose out of the question. I asked him what was the most important enzyme in his enzyme formula. I thought it was a pancreatin. He goes, it's chymotrypsin. I looked at him oddly because there's only 1 milligram of chymotrypsin per tablet in his formula. He goes, yes, but you don't understand. Without the chymotrypsin, nothing else would work. And he told me about how the most highly fibrinolytic enzyme leads the way and becomes the general for the rest of the enzymes. Okay. Trypsin is very highly fibrinolytic when it comes to mammals and humans. But the 2 most highly fibrinolytic, the 2 most highly scar tissue eating enzymes on the planet are serrapeptase and nattokinase. They're about neck and neck if you take a look at their enzymic activity. Where does serrapeptase come from? Serrapeptase comes from a little bacteria that lives inside the silkworm, which becomes the silk moth, which becomes the beautiful thing that we see. Silk is the strongest connective tissue on God's green earth. Much stronger than mammalian connective tissue. So for the butterfly, for the moth to eat its way out of the cocoon, it doesn't physically do it. It doesn't snip at it with pincers. It dissolves its way out using the serrapeptase. Silk is so strong, if you hung it on your clothesline by its top 2 corners and shot at it, pick a caliber, I don't care, it doesn't matter. You will raise the silk, the bullet will graze the silk and put a crease through it, but it will not penetrate it. That's how strong a connective tissue silk is. So anything that can eat through silk will be like a hot knife through butter on human scar tissue. This is the reason why the serrapeptase-based proteolytic enzyme blends are more effective, work faster, and have a better effect than the old animal-based blends. Not only is there more serrapeptase in these blends than there was chymotrypsin in the old blends, but milligram per milligram, serrapeptase is a much more fibrinolytic enzyme than chymotrypsin. Okay, let us now, let's see, where am I? Why do we worry about enzymes? The 4 or 5 different protein-eating proteolytic enzymes that we make or that we eat turn into some 3,000 other enzymes. Those 3,000 other enzymes create between 7,000 to 25,000 positive enzymatic reactions in the body. Without enzymes, enzymes are biocatalysts. They are things that make other things work. They are things that speed up chemical reactions. Without the enzymes, our life processes would be as slow as sap running down a tree in Vermont in December. Batting an eyelid would take you an hour. Life as we know it would not exist. For you docs out there, I propose this test. We know when a patient is premorbid, when their dopamine level stops, bottoms out, we know in 3 days that patient's going to be dead. I am speculating that about the same thing happens when the pancreas and the small intestine stop making proteolytic enzymes. I can almost bank on the fact that if we did the proper testing and found out what a patient's proteolytic enzyme levels were, from the day they stopped making their last drop of proteolytic enzyme, it wouldn't take more than 3-4 days for that patient to be stone cold dead. Okay. Dr. Wolf found that we make a finite amount of enzymes in a lifetime. Enzymes are part of the exocrine system, not the endocrine system, but the exocrine system. And you'd be surprised how many professionals always tell me, well, if you put in the enzymes, your body will stop making them, and then if your body stops making them, then you won't have them when you need them. That mechanism only works with the endocrine system, the hormone system. The exocrine system is a completely different system. There is no balance between your tears and your sweat. There's no balance between your sweat and your spit. There's no balance between your pancreatic juice output and your tear output. Those are all exocrine functions. There's no balance between them. And what happens when you put in murine? What happens when you drink water? Does your mouth stop making saliva because you drink water? Do your eyes stop making tears because you put in eye drops? Does your sweat stop happening because you take an occasional shower? No. Do not confuse the exocrine with the endocrine system. They are two completely different systems, and when you supply the needs of the exocrine system, all you're doing is sparing the production of that system. You're not shutting down the production in that system, you're sparing the production of that system. So Dr. Wolf found that by the age of 25, most of us had used up about half of our proteolytic enzyme output, and that makes sense. How many kids out there? We all know what kids do. They run around, they strain, they sprain, they fall, they get up, they do whatever. In the course of a day, if we did what your average 3-year-old did, we'd be dead or laid up in the hospital for a month or 2. Kids don't get inflammation. Kids don't usually get fibrosis. Kids don't get the inflammatory conditions that the rest of us succumb to post-35. Why is that? Their proteolytic enzyme level is so bloody high, it's taken care of. And I'll explain why in just a bit. So Dr. Wolf found that after 27, the body begins to age because it's got about half of its proteolytic enzyme level left. It has to dole it out for however long you're going to be around. So instead of doling it out with a tablespoon like it used to, the body begins to dole out the proteolytic enzymes with an eyedropper. And then all sorts of things happen. Let us take a look at the 5 actions of systemic enzymes. First and foremost, systemic enzymes are anti-inflammatory. They are the body's first line of defense against inflammation. And that's news to most of us who are educated in North America. We were all taught that the corticosteroid system came in and that was the body's first line of defense against inflammation. Ain't so. The body creates inflammation by circulating immune complexes. These little critters, which I'll call CICs for short, are tagged to go to specific places. Let's say, I always have the example if you've got a bum right knee, because just about everyone's got a bum right knee. You've got a bum right knee. That right knee is sending the irritation signal to your immune system. Your immune system creates this little CIC, this little protein, which it does two things with. It tags it to go to your right knee, and it tags it as an exogenous protein, as a protein that does not belong in your body. By the way, the fellow who figured out protein tagging won the Nobel Prize in biology in 1999. So that little circulating immune complex floats down to your right knee and creates inflammation, the hallmarks of which are redness, swelling, and pain. Initially, that's a good thing, because the inflammation warns us, stay off of it, take care of me, do this, do that. But after a while, inflammation becomes self-perpetuating. And after a while, inflammation creates fibrosis, because it is trauma. How do we deal with inflammation most of the time? When the Time magazine article came out about a month ago saying that heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, many of the other things that kill us were directly related to inflammation. At the end of the article, the authors were saying, now don't run out and take the nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, because, and they didn't quite put it this way, but I'm going to put it this way, taking those drugs will kill you faster than the diseases you're trying to run away from. According to the Wall Street Journal, April 19th of 1999, 20,000 Americans on the average die from aspirin, ibuprofen, naproxen, Relafin, Vioxx, Celebrex. The COX-2 inhibiting drugs were supposed to not have any side effects. Turned out they were killing people faster than the COX-1. This is how we normally deal with fighting inflammation. Why are those drugs so deadly? They basically shut down the production of circulating immune complexes. That may sound like a good thing, except that not all CICs are bad. Some of the CICs go to detox your liver. Some of the CICs, go to run your kidneys. Some of the CICs go to maintain your intestinal lining. Anyone remembers what happened to Alonzo Mourning in the Miami Heat about 2 years ago?
Yeah.
He was driving himself into kidney damage and kidney failure because of the ibuprofen use he was using. It's because of him now that the entire NBA is screening its players for liver and kidney damage every single month if they take ibuprofen. He almost died. He had to go on dialysis for a few weeks so his kidneys would take a rest and maybe start working again. He just retired last year because he couldn't take it anymore. All from the ibuprofen use. If 20,000 Americans wind up dead and another 100,000 wind up in the hospital from using the nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, then we dang well better look for an alternative. The alternative are the systemic enzymes. I've often been asked, how do the enzymes know what to eat? I want you to think of the enzymes as Pac-Man. Fitting analogy. Look exactly like Pac-Man. Enzymes are lock and key mechanisms. They fit into certain keys and bang, if the key fits, they eat it. Simple as that. The technical word for eating is lysing. I like to say eating. Sounds better. The enzymes fight inflammation by finding the CICs that are marked as exogenous proteins and lysing them and eating them. Very simple, very safe, very benign mechanism. They don't shut down overall production of CICs. They don't do any damage to the liver. They don't shut down your kidneys. They don't do whatever. You know, when you come to think of those 20,000 Americans, most of them have died of kidney failure. And if you've ever seen anyone die of kidney failure, it ain't pretty and it ain't painless. It's a nasty thing to die from. Those 20,000 needless deaths. The second thing that systemic enzymes do. Yes. Make sure I got the order right. And I think the most important thing that the enzymes do, they eat away at fibrosis. They eat away at scar tissue. There is nothing else in medicine. There is nothing else in the natural health world. There is nothing in the medical world. There ain't nothing nowhere that can eat through scar tissue. Ask any plastic surgeon. Their beautiful work can be marred by the growth of keloids, and all that beautiful pulling and tugging and stitching that they did might have little mounds on it that look like a bird came up and pooped on there. Yeah. Can get ruined real easy. We learned in anatomy that scar tissue is actually what kills us. If you take a look at the internal organs of an 18-year-old, let's say we've got two postmortem tables here, 18-year-olds over here, 80-year-olds over here. We take the organs out of the 18-year-old. What do they look like? Big, juicy, plump, wet, full size, what they're supposed to look like. Go over here to the 80-year-old. Pull them out. What do they look like? Dried, shrunken raisins. Try to cut through them. They sound and feel like an Italian bread that's been left out on the kitchen counter for a week. Instead of the nice whoosh, like slicing through Jell-O over on this side. What's the difference? The difference is fibrosis. As we age, especially from 35 on, our internal organs begin to grow this lattice work, this spider web of fibrosis. It decreases their size and it decreases their function. One of the goals of HGH therapy is to increase the size of the internal organs back to what they had been in the late teens and 20s. But you can't do that completely without getting rid of the fibrosis first. Okay, what other things does fibrosis do? Yeah, I'll get my grammar right. Fibrosis forms the lattice work around which arteriosclerotic plaque accrues. The intima, the inside of the blood vessel, receives an injury. It reacts by lacing through the spiderweb stuff of fibrosis. On that spiderweb stuff glom on the fats, the heavy metals, and the calcium to create arteriosclerotic plaque. Dr. Hans Neiper was using a serrapeptase-based enzyme, a drug called danzin, to eat away through that fibrotic material and do what can basically be called the poor man's chelation therapy. It didn't take out the heavy metals, it emulsified some of the fat, but it did eat through the lattice work that held it all together. And in 2 years of danzin therapy, he would guarantee that most everyone would be completely cleaned out. There are things you can add to that, and we'll talk about this later, to enhance that effect. But basically, you get rid of the fibrosis, the other stuff just breaks up, and you can deal with that. And by the way, in 20 years of doing that, he never created an embolite. No one ever had a stroke. No one ever had anything happen from having a piece of this stuff get dissolved away and go floating away. And in the entire 40-year history of systemic enzyme use, no one has ever created an embolite from systemic enzyme therapy. If we take a look at the diseases that plague man, especially that plague women, many of them are fibrosis-based. Fibrocystic breast disease, uterine fibroids, endometriosis, ovarian cysts are all estrogen-driven fibrotic diseases. All of them, all of the fibrosis can be controlled, all of the fibrosis can be eaten away, all of the fibrosis can be minimized through the use of highly fibrinolytic proteolytic enzymes. Had a call from an MD gal from the southern part of your state. She had had a 15-year history of fibrocystic breast disease, breast engorgement, the pain that came with it. She started taking the Vitalzyme supplement, I think it was for backache. And her breast started aching. Okay. She calls me a few weeks later, asking about why, or she wanted to ask about why her breast ached, but didn't quite. 3 weeks later, I think, she finally called me up and we got to talking. She was actually feeling the enzymes lysing away, eating away at the fibrocystic cysts and all the tendrils in her breast, and in 3 weeks' time, she was almost 100% clear of her 15-year history of fibrocystic breast disease. With another gal that I spoke to, it happened even faster. She was taking 10 capsules a day for a backache, a back injury she had sustained, and she called me up madder than a hatter because her boobs hurt. Her boobs ached. Called me up on day one. I wasn't in. I was away at a lecture. Called me up on day two. I was still away. By day 3, when I got to speak to her, she wasn't angry anymore. And what she told me was she'd had a 10-year history of terrible fibrocystic breast disease. She had been through the mill with every drug, with every therapy, with everything, had the pain, had the engorgement, scared as about it turning into cancer. In 3 days of 10 capsules a day, 100% of the fibrocystic cysts were gone from one breast and 50% were gone from the other, and she knew why she was aching. Some folks who have impaired circulation, peripheral vascular disease. Some folks who have increased peripheral vascular resistance, cold hands and feet, tell me that they can feel a bit of a tingling. Medically, it sounds like paresthesia, little pins and needles like when your arm falls asleep. In their skin, in the thighs, in the legs, in the upper extremities. And then within a few days of that, all of a sudden, instead of being cold and pasty white, they're pink. Anyone here ever see a cardiac bypass patient a day or two after bypass? You know how red they are? Because all of a sudden they're getting blood everywhere. It's about the same thing happened. These folks were pink. And they weren't cold anymore. Their extremities weren't cold. And their husbands didn't slide away from them in bed when the gals wanted to warm their feet up on them. Such is the action of a highly fibrinolytic systemic enzyme. To eat away at scar tissue, do it quickly. And as I said, it is the only thing on the planet that can do that. If we don't eat away at this scar tissue, then our internal organs will lose their size, will diminish in function. If we don't eat away at the scar tissue, then post-surgery scar tissue patients will have to go back in, get sliced open again, and get the scar tissue cut out. For those of you who haven't heard this story, my wife had an emergency C-section in December of 2000. I put her on 30 tablets of an old enzyme blend to keep her from developing post-operative scar tissue. Yet 9 months to a year later, she had so much post-op scar tissue that you could feel this huge spider web from the base of her ribs to the top of her pubic bone. She had this bubble in her abdomen that didn't allow her to fully lie down on the floor and play with the baby. She could actually rock on the thing. Worst of all, it was invading into her abdominal cavity and it was strangulating off her intestines. She was going to need another surgery simply to cut away the scar tissue. This despite taking another brand of enzymes. When the VitalZyme samples came in, they're serrapeptase-based enzyme. We started her off on them. 6 to 8 weeks later, not a whit of scar tissue was left. You couldn't palpate it, she couldn't feel it, the bubble wasn't there anymore, and her bowels were free. Since then, we've had abdominal surgeons, thoracic surgeons, plastic surgeons using these enzymes to prevent scar tissue, to prevent keloids, and to eat away at existing scar tissues and keloids in patients who have already grown this stuff. It's been interesting to me, being a naturopath. I get more calls from medical doctors than from anybody else. And all these MDs are so excited about all the actions, but especially the fibrinolytic action, because there ain't nothing else anywhere that can do it. All right, I've harped enough on that. The next action of the enzymes is that they modulate immune function. Did I get that one right? Thank you. The enzymes are adaptogenic. The studies and the practical work done in hospitals both in Asia and in Central Europe have shown that when the immune system is cranked up too high, as in rheumatoid arthritis, as in lupus, as in MS, that the systemic enzymes, once you find the right dose, will downshift the immune system and will eat away at the antibodies that the immune system is creating to attack its own tissue. For MS patients, for example, the periods of acuity are greatly reduced. The periods of remission are greatly increased. Same happens with MS and with lupus patients. For folks with a very low functioning immune system, the systemic enzymes will boost immune function. It is dose dependent. The more you take, the stronger the effect you get. But they will upshift immune function. They will improve the action of the white blood cells in getting rid of bugs. They will increase the number of natural killer cells. Remember that term. It's really important when you're fighting cancer. And basically, I want you to think of the white blood cell as both a soldier and a dustman, a garbage man. As a soldier, a white blood cell surrounds a bug, and using little hands called Fc receptors, rips the thing apart, and then dutifully carries it over to the liver so that the enzymes in the liver can wash the hands off of this debris. The debris goes from the liver through the portal vein into the large bowel, and it's supposed to go out. And everyone's liver, if it was working efficiently, would get this done the first time that the white blood cell goes through. Show of hands. Whose liver's working efficiently here? God bless you. Thought I'd have to go to Tonga or Pago Pago to find folks with efficient livers. Most of us don't have efficient functioning livers. So the liver doesn't clean the blood cells out the first time through, or the second, or the third, or the fifth, or the sixth, or the ninth. God knows when it finally does. It doesn't happen. So what happens is you've got a lot of your white blood cells, instead of being soldiers fighting on the front line, they're garbage men. They're waiting to dispose of this stuff before they can go back and kill more bugs. The introduction of the highly fibrinolytic, proteolytic enzymes will eat that stuff away before it ever gets to the liver. It'll do it in the bloodstream. It will help the body to break that gunk down. It will free the white blood cells and allow them to go back to being soldiers. The next function of systemic enzymes is that they clean the blood. The blood is not only the river of life, it's the river of garbage. All of your metabolic waste gets carried away in the blood. Make sure I'm not forgetting anything here. Most people's blood are as thick as ketchup or yogurt for a variety of reasons. One, we have all the metabolic wastes that our livers, our really efficient livers, are supposed to dispose of first time it goes through. Secondly, post 35, we don't have enough enzymes floating around in our bloodstream to offset the amount of fibrin and fibrinogen that the blood is carrying. So the blood carries an awful lot of fibrin and fibrinogen against the day you might cut yourself, break a bone, or you might need to heal something, so that the fibrinogen can grow across the wound, and then the tissue can grow through the fibrinogen matrix. You got a lot of this stuff floating around in you, and it's gunking you up. This fibrin also helps to form the matrix around which embolites are created, and too much of the fibrin, coupled with a lot of platelet aggregation, when your blood cells are sticky and clumped together, create embolites that cause strokes and heart attacks. The enzymes will clean the necrotic debris out of the blood without having to go through the liver. The enzymes will decrease platelet aggregation and make the blood slicker. The enzymes will, we already know, eat away at the excesses of fibrin and fibrinogen. If we do dark field microscopy, we can see that we do a blood sample before the enzymes. We take the enzymes, we wait a half an hour, we do a blood sample. Again, completely different picture. Fibrin and fibrinogen are cleared up. The clumpiness is gone. Beautiful, flowing, nice, ungunky blood after the enzymes. The last action of the enzymes is that they act as antivirals. And according to new research out of a university hospital in India, they're also proving to be antibacterial, but let me not touch on that because I don't have enough data on it. The enzymes are antiviral. Viruses latch on to your DNA via their exterior protein coating. Their exterior protein coating will eat through your cell wall, latch on to your DNA, and begin to replicate itself. From the second that happens, that cell stops being your cell and it belongs to the virus. So think of yourself as an hourglass. The more grains of sand are working for the virus than are working for you, the worse off you are. And when you hit just about 50-50, you're dead. Anything that can impair, anything that can damage, anything that can eat away at that exterior protein coating of the virus and prevent the isoprene bond will render that little bit of virus inert and lower the total viral load. This was a theory behind the antiviral medicines of isoprinosine and ribavirin, which we make here in the United States. Some of them are made here in California, but you can't get them here. I won't even get into that topic. The WHO called isoprinosine, the world's strongest antiviral medication. Try to get a prescription for it here in the United States. What the Navy did, they were looking for a wide spectrum antiviral because it's impossible to come up with a virus-specific antiviral serum as fast as the bad guys can make up new viruses. So they wanted something that could eat away at just about any virus. They went with highly fibrinolytic systemic enzymes. They are in last stages of FDA approval for their own particular blend of what looks a heck of a lot like what we can get at the health food store. They've got the data. You know, matter of fact, I came upon the Navy data completely by accident. I was in Google one day, and I'm searching around, and I just pumped in enzyme research, and I get these reams of stuff coming from the Office of Naval Research. And I bookmarked it. Didn't think to download it and save it. Okay? I mean, just reams and reams and reams of all this antiviral research. Went back the next day, guess what? They wouldn't let me in. Someone had figured out that they classified the thing wrong, and I wasn't supposed to have seen it. And I should have. I've been kicking myself for almost 5 years for not doing it. But at the beginning of this last spring, the DoD admitted that they were in last stages of FDA work for that particular enzyme supplement. So, okay. Given all the different things that systemic enzymes can do, just those 5 primary actions, how many fields of application can we think of off the top of our heads to fit these enzymes into? First and foremost, just plain old anti-aging. Everything from protein cross-linking to just plain old enzymic depletion to wrinkles. One of the things that Dr. Wolf was known for, he was the anti-aging doctor to a bunch of Hollywood folks. The only one who's still alive, I think, is Julie Andrews. But all those old ingenues, whenever they, slathering preparation H on their faces and stuff, whenever they wanted to get serious about anti-aging, they went to see Dr. Wolf in New York. One of the things that happens, and I've gotten reports on this from lots of gals, give you a couple of really good examples. One gal in the cosmetics industry for 20, 30 years had terrible spider veins throughout her lower extremities. From her belly button down, just a massive spider veins. And she had nice legs, but she never showed them off because of all the spider veins. She was on a back rehab program. I had her doing exercises. I had her taking the enzyme. She bounds into my office a few weeks or months. Now I don't remember which, but it was no more than 3 months after she started the program. Bounds into my office and declares, "What are you doing? If Revlon would have known about this, we would have made millions on it." Her spider veins had disappeared. What had happened was, spider veins, like varicose veins, have little clogs of fibrin blocking the vein, causing blood to pool behind it. Well, the enzymes went in there and ate away at the fibrin, allowing free passage of the blood. On top of that, bromelain and the 2 bioflavonoids, the amla and the rutin, in the enzymes strengthen connective tissue. Vascular tissue, histologically, is soft connective tissue. It's based on bioflavonoids and organic sulfur. So it not only opened up the vein, it strengthened the vascular wall, and bingo, spider veins had disappeared. Got a call from a fellow a few days ago, who was taking the Vitalzyme for backache. He had a huge varicose vein in the back of one knee, almost where a baker's cyst would be, but it was a varicose vein. Had it for years, over a decade. Started on the Vitalzyme within a week. The varicose vein did not hurt, could be palpated. He could bend his knee, he could lie on it, he could play with it. He said it was gone. What happened was the plug that was holding the blood pool had been lysed away, and now blood had free flow through there, and he wasn't feeling the distension. I don't think that the enzymes made the vein whole again. Once you blow up a balloon and stretch it out, I don't know what you can do to get that balloon back intact again, but if you remove the plug and drain the distension, pain is gone. Dr. Wolf's patients found that their wrinkles lightened up or disappeared. If you think about skin, imagine the skin is a sheet and it's being held up by these little columns of, let's call them yarn, because that's what they look like. As long as those columns of yarn are hydrated, the skin gets held up. As we age, protein and sugar, again, here's cross-linking, begins to accrue around those little threads of yarn, preventing the fluid from getting into there and hydrating the connective tissue. So what happens? That little column of yarn collapses. If you get enough of these columns of yarn collapsing in a row, what have you got? You've got a wrinkle, because the skin above it falls down. So you go in with the enzymes, you depolymerize, you eat away at the coating on the yarn, you allow the fluid to get back into the connective tissue. Guess what happens? Now all this is an aside. The most important aspect in anti-aging is to eat away at the fibrosis that is growing in our internal organs, our lungs. Pulmonologists are having a wonderful time with chronic obstructive pulmonary patients and systemic enzymes, because the enzymes are doing a number of things. First and foremost, they're thinning the mucus, allowing for greater motility, and the patients just have an easier time breathing. Number two, more important, the enzymes are eating away at the restrictive scar tissue that is not allowing for expansion of the lungs, and eating away at the scar tissue that is covering the alveolar sacs, preventing the transfer of oxygen from the lung to the blood. A really interesting case presented to us by a pulmonologist in Winston-Salem. He had a patient, has a patient, who is the oldest living survivor of radiation poisoning. As a young boy in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, this fellow fell into a vat of uranium isotope 130 something or other with another child. A man came by and rescued them. The other child died 2 days later. The man who rescued them died within 2 to 5 years with all sorts of cancers. And the Atomic Energy Commission is following this particular fellow because he's now in his late 60s, and he's the oldest surviving person to ever been exposed to that much radiation. He had more radiation exposure than the guys who went in to put out the fire at Chernobyl. And he's still alive. He was a mass of inflammation. He was a mass of scar tissue. His bedroom was on the second floor of his house. He'd go up 2 steps, rest for 10 minutes, go up another 2 steps. It would take him an hour to get up to go to bed. His doctor, his pulmonologist, put him on the enzymes for his inflammation. And it was working well. But he walked into the office 7 days later, and he asked for a pulmonary function test. And Dr. White goes, "I just gave you a pulmonary function test last Monday. What do you want another one for now?" And the fellow says, "Well, let me tell you what happened. After 3 days of using this stuff, I went up and down the stairs without stopping, 3 times. Then I went for a mile walk with my wife. Came back from the mile walk, I got on the treadmill, and I stayed there for 12, 15 minutes. And what I'm really here for is a prescription for Viagra." Dr. White gave him his pulmonary function test, where he found the patient had a 100% increase in vital capacity in 7 days. That's how fast these enzymes can work. And there's a trick to finding the dose in the enzymes, a trick to finding what I call the activation dose, but they can work that fast. All vitamins and minerals are coenzymes and cofactors. They are things that need enzymes in order to work. I'll make the bold statement here that the enzymes will work without the vitamins, and the minerals of the vitamins and minerals will not work without the enzymes. How many times have we heard that vitamin mineral therapy works so splendidly for one person and don't do squat for somebody else? We hear that all the time. There has always been this inconsistency. in how well vitamins and minerals work. My contention is that the vitamins and minerals do not work when there is not enough proteolytic enzyme floating around the body. Let me give you a very practical example, and I will close with this. Let's look at the gods of the vitamin mineral supplementation world. Let's look at Dr. John Paul Kellogg, Dr. Bernard Jensen, Dr. Carlton Fredericks, and Dr. Paul Bragg. All of them great teachers, all of them great educators, all of them wonderful men who brought us a greater understanding of nutrition. Dr. Kellogg died of a heart attack. Dr. Jensen died of exhaustion after a serious bout with prostate cancer. Dr. Pavel Arola died of a massive stroke. Dr. Carlton Fredericks died of lung cancer. Dr. Paul Bragg died surfing at the age of 96. The only better way to go is the way Errol Flynn did. He was surfing, fell off his board, knocked his head on a coral reef, got knocked unconscious, and drowned. He was doing something that was fun. He did not die of a terrible disease. He wasn't decrepit. He had all of his own hair, had all of his own teeth, had the body of a beach boy. Women still chased him around, and he probably still knew what to do with them. It was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. What was the difference? Dr. Bragg ate primarily a raw food diet, which back when he was doing it, gave you a lot of enzymes. These days, the raw food diet will still give you a lot of enzymes, but not as much as they used to, and I'll tell you why. Here in the States, we're no longer used to fruits and vegetables being out of season. You go to the store, you can always get lettuce, you can always get apples, you can always get grapes, it doesn't occur to us that, hey, growing season in North America is between, what, April and October? If it ain't April through October when this stuff is growing, where's this stuff coming from? Thank you. Southern Hemisphere. Pick an orange off of your tree. It has 100% of the enzymes it's supposed to have. Wait 30 minutes, put that orange down on your kitchen counter, come back in half an hour. It's got 50% of the enzymes it's supposed to have. So, out of season fruits and vegetables, in storage, in deep freeze with argon gas for 30 days or more. What do you think the enzyme level is going to be on those? Very little. You can still get some through juicing. You can still get some through the raw food diet, but it's not as easy as it used to be. We all have to supplement. If we don't want to wind up like those other four docs, if we want to wind up like Dr. Bragg, dying while doing something happy, if we don't want to succumb to the diseases of inflammation and fibrosis, and when you think about applying enzymes, I'll leave you with this last thought. If it's an itis or it's an osis, well, except for osteoporosis, but if it's an itis, meaning it's from inflammation, or it's an osis, meaning it has something to do with fibrosis, the highly fibrinolytic systemic enzymes such as the Vitalzyme will work splendidly, and I am betting can increase the lifespan by not just years, but maybe by decades, and keep you from succumbing to the diseases that might befall you before the end. I thank you all for listening. Again, God bless you all. Thank you.
Okay, he's got a question. Yes, sir. Ben.
If you're taking serratiopeptase or nattokinase, then you don't need chymotrypsin, or you still need?
You don't need the chymotrypsin, no. The
5 or 6 things. Taking either one is fine. The next question is, do you take it with meals or without meals? It wouldn't work with meals.
Well, if you take it with a meal, some of the enzymes will go to digest that meal. But not all of them. We know from the work being done by veterinarians, especially large animal vets, they're feeding the cows and the horses the Vitalzyme along with their fodder, and they're getting the anti-inflammatory and anti-fibrosis effects anyway. Yes, they're losing some to the digestion of food. And yes, I would prefer to see patients take it in between meals, a half an hour before or an hour after. But if you have to take it with a meal, perfectly okay. Yes, sir.
Can you describe her wife's dosage regimen?
Her dosage then started her off, I think she was taking 15 a day.
Like over like 5 times a day or
3 times a day. Her dosage at present can vary depending on how humid the day is, whether we've got cold fronts going through. North Central Texas, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. So, you know, my recommendation is for folks to start off with 3 capsules 3 times a day. If you don't feel any relief from whatever it is that you're taking it from within 3 days, if you've got an owie, if you've got an ache or a pain, in 3 days, do 4 capsules 3 times a day. If that doesn't work in 3 days, do 5 capsules, and so on and so forth, until you hit the dose at which you begin to feel something is happening. I call that the activation dose. Once you're at the activation dose, stay there for 30 to 90 days, depending on how bad your condition is. And then you can try to reduce the dose the same way that you raised it up. Just do it in reverse and see how far back you can wean it. Give you an example. MS patients, during periods of acuity, they may need to take 30 capsules a day. During periods of remission, they usually do okay with 9. Okay, so it can vary day by day, or depending on. Yes, I do 30 a day. I've got more aches, pains, injuries, arthritis, torn rotator cuffs, torn up knees, herniated discs than any other person that I know. I've got more collections of owies, plus having had a history of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. At its worst point, my spleen was swollen 3 times its size. And my wife stopped me from jumping out of airplanes 2 years ago, but I'm still doing all the other insane stuff that I shouldn't be doing. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
How many enzymes do you need to take to break down scar tissue in the nail organs that's been there for 27 to 30 years?
Oh, I would say about 5, 3 times a day would be a good dose. Let me tell you about.
And then I have another.
Sure. Go. Okay. We kind of did an informal study with blue-collar back injury patients. We were giving them systemic enzymes, and we wanted them to report back on how they were feeling. It wasn't a, really systematic study. We didn't have double blinds. We just wanted to find out what their loose effects were. I started getting very sheepish phone calls from some of these guys going, can this thing make your penis burn? Excuse me? Can it make your penis bigger? I don't know what's going on. Well, my wife's complaining. She says it hurts. I had another fellow call up, told me his wife was very happy about it. We started getting these phone calls, and this is what happens. In the corpus cavernosum, in the spongy tissues of the penis, the same thing happens as happens in the liver, as happens in the kidney. Fibrosis begins to accrue. Fibrosis restricts 2 things: the expandability of the tissue and the blood vessels getting into it, because you also have a clogging up of the microcirculation to the area. So one of the things that we found is when guys start taking this stuff, all things being equal, if everything works, they get about the same size as they were back when they were 18, 20 again. The sorriest chart to ever look at is one that compares penis size to age. Because, the older we get, the smaller it gets now. The reverse of that, the gals' vaginal barrels are beginning to flatten out and expand, so all of a sudden we get a gun that's too small and a target that's too big, and nobody's happy. Okay, second question. So the gal back there, yes.
Second question has to do with what I call value medicine. How many capsules did that woman take that was healing her spider veins?
I think she was on 5, 3 times a day. I'm pretty sure she was, yeah.
And that was for about 3 months?
About 3 months, if I remember correctly, yes.
She had them all her life?
Yeah, she had them from her 20s on. She was in her 50s.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
2 questions. One, you changed your formulation. What's the difference between the old and the new?
The Vitalzyme?
Yeah, Vitalzyme.
Okay.
Women have fibroids in the uterus.
Mm-hmm.
We'll work on that.
Okay. Vitalzyme X is a new variant of Vitalzyme. It is available to healthcare professionals only. It is a kick-ass version of Vitalzyme. Vitalzyme is a kick-ass systemic enzyme compared to all the other systemic enzymes. And Vitalzyme X is a kick-ass version of Vitalzyme. It has an enzyme that has been used in pharmaceutical circles in Japan called Ceoprose. The addition of the Ceoprose increases the action The overall enzymic action, 2 to 4-fold.
How do you spell that?
Seaprose, ceaprose. And the serapeptase is a major general. The ceaprose is a 5-star. So we've got greater overall direction and a stronger overall effect.
Why is that restricted to practice?
Company decision. The healthcare practitioners were asking for something that wasn't available in the stores.
Why would you not sell that to this many?
Ask that fellow right there, don't ask me. No, no. Okay, next question. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes.
Venous veins are sometimes diagnosed with that. Is that when the veins collapse inside?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the big.
Venous, your veins in your legs. He has to work compression, varicose veins.
Okay, for okay.
In other words, the doctor said that the veins have collapsed. The little
Right. They
flaps don't work.
yes. Veins have little muscles in them and little valves to prevent backflow. And what we see with venous distension is that these muscles have lost their tone and the balloon has been stretched out. So there's a lot of backflow that happens and a lot of blood pooling. First rule, and when I taught an introduction to orthopedics, I hammered this into my students' heads. The rule is venous and lymphatic return is governed by muscular action. Yes, we can wear compression stockings. Yes, we can depend on the valves in our veins. But the best thing to drain lymph and blood is exercise. And there are a few precautions that have to be done, and there are certain kinds of exercise that work better than others. The Jobst compression thingies do really well. Compression stockings do well, but exercise is very important, especially exercise with the proper arch supports. The blood vessels through which the blood comes back up into the torso lie under the arch. When the arch collapses, it puts pressure on those blood vessels and does not allow for the full return. So if you go to the drugstore and buy yourself a set of $9 Dr. Scholl's Flexo, F-L-E-X-O. It's a leather arch support, 3/4 of a sole. Costs you $9 to $11. Most folks will have a great improvement in circulation just from the arch supports. If you do the arch supports and a good amount of lower extremity exercise, I prefer seeing people do recumbent cycling, because it doesn't strain the back, it doesn't strain the joints, it has a good amount of muscular action in the lower extremity, and it really helps to pump lymphatic fluid and blood back up into the torso. We can prevent a lot of that. We can't return the tone back to the vein. We can't return the muscular action back to the valve, but we can assist in the drainage. Getting to the question on fibroids. Many reports from physicians and from patients of fibroids being eaten away. 2 warnings I have to give. There may be some vaginal bleeding. Don't be scared. That's just the enzymes doing their work, eating away at the fibroid. Secondly, and this goes mainly for the guys, the fibroids have little pockets of estrogen. And when the enzymes eat through that fibroid and release the estrogen, your gal's going to have one heck of a PMS mood swing. Be nice. Hand them a bottle of progesterone. Say, honey, I think you need this. Progesterone cream will turn any estrogen-dominant gal from a roaring tiger into a purring kitten in 15 to 30 minutes. Yes, sir.
Is it possible for people with ulcers to take these?
Yes, and in Europe, it is standard protocol to treat all sorts of GI ulcerations and inflammations using systemic enzymes. The thought here in the States is don't throw in the enzymes, they'll eat away at the exposed tissue. No. Enzymes will eat exogenous tissue. Tissue that is marked by the body is not belonging there. Yes, it'll eat away at the scar tissue that IBS patients grow in between the intestinal lining and the bowel wall, but it will not eat into the intestinal lining.
I've had people that have tried to take these things and get burning sensations.
What happens with about 20% of the population And some of this can't be worked out ever. Some folks can't take anything on an empty stomach. When they do, regardless of whether it's something really benign or something really awful, they get agita, they get heartburn, they get, intestinal upset. With a lot of folks, they get those symptoms because they have systemic yeast infections, and as the enzymes come in contact with the yeast buds, it blows them up. Blowing up the yeast buds creates distension, which creates pain, creates a lot of gas, and also brain fog, because as the yeast blows up, it releases alcohol, aldehydes, and those kind of float up to the brain, and those are the things that cause systemic yeast infection patients to be kind of brain foggy anyway. When I was in the midst of my chronic fatigue, I knew all about systemic yeast infections and the brain fog. So the enzymes do cause that die-off, and then sometimes the liver kicks in because it's got all these dead yeast cells to deal with all of a sudden, so it's getting nauseous. So some folks have that effect. I will tell you that it is only 1/4 of the population that cannot take the systemic enzymes. The Germans figured that out about a decade or so ago.
Would it be better for those types of people to try and take it with food?
Yes, right. If they take it with a light carbohydrate meal, bagel with a schmear, a bowl of oatmeal, something.
Would you take then more of them so that there's more left after the...
You can, but I'll tell you, it only takes half a Vitalzyme to digest Thanksgiving supper. So, if you're taking 3, okay, so you're going to get 2 3/4 of it, if you have it with a bowl of oatmeal. I would prefer to see patients mix it with applesauce. And those of you who can't swallow the capsules, applesauce works great. For those of you who want to give it to kids, mixing it with ginger ale or Powerade works wonderfully. My toddler cut his teeth on that.
Do these make good digestive enzymes as well?
Well, 50-50. Some patients don't need digestive enzymes anymore once they start on systemic enzymes. About 50% of the patients still do, so it cuts right down the middle. Yes, sir?
Any effect too much? What would be the side effect of the effect?
The runs. Systemic enzymes have 0 toxicity. In a paper presented March 22nd at the Society of Toxicology in Baltimore last month, this particular blend was looked at, and it had no LD50. The studies that the Germans did on human patients was even more extensive. They fed systemic enzymes to the tune of 3,750 tablets a day for prolonged periods of time to a bunch of prisoners. In Germany, you can do studies on humans. They exchange prison time for being a guinea pig. So in Germany, they actually have live test dummies. So these prisoners took 3,750 of these enzyme tablets a day for prolonged periods, and the worst they had was one heck of a case of the runs. And I'll tell you, an interesting aside, they were all so much healthier after doing that for a while. They were completely cleaned out. Their arteries were cleaned out, their bowels were cleaned out, they had not a lick of fibrosis anywhere. Yes, sir?
Where can you be, how can you be reached, and where can one get vitals?
Okay. Folks who want to read what I write and all my madness and my ranting and raving can go to www.drwong.us. drwong.us. US, United States. Good patriotic end there. My phone number and contact information are on there. The easiest way to get to me, though, is by email. I am often out of town. My phone calls pile up, but I usually, and I have no idea why I do this. I can walk into my office, and I see I've got 90 messages on my answering machine, but I've got 15 emails. I'll go to the emails first, and I'll get to the answering machine sometime, whenever I get to it. Don't know why I do that, but that's the way I operate. So you'll get to me faster via the email than you will via the phone. But if you absolutely want to talk to me, my phone and contact information are on the website. You can tell, I almost forgot to give you guys my website. I don't self-promote. I'm not here selling any of my personal services. I'm not here trying to get you guys into my office. I don't have an office anymore. I don't see patients anymore. So what I talk about are the things that I've found that work, really work well, on patients who have had zero hope of ever getting better, chronic fatigue patients, fibromyalgia patients, patients with uterine fibroids the size of Manhattan. And the stuff works, it works well, and it's just magic. Yes, sir?
What do you think about taking serrapeptase with the vital sign?
More serrapeptase absolutely cannot hurt, so go ahead and do it. Yeah?
What about bleeding when you take too much?
There have been no reported cases of anyone hemorrhaging from taking serrapeptase. There has been one reported case of a bleed out in the entire medical literature. It happened in Mexico with the Mexican version of Wobenzyme. And if you're familiar with how they make Wobenzyme in Mexico, it's substantially stronger than the stuff they make in Germany. The German stuff is actually substantially weaker. So if you have to use that enzyme, use the stuff from Mexico. But that patient did not tell his doc that he was on the enzymes, he had major surgery, and he bled out. But that's the only incidence reported in the medical literature of a patient bleeding out from enzyme use. If that would have been possible, you know, there have been over 140 million Europeans on systemic enzyme therapy in the last 40 years. There have been tens of thousands of Japanese and Asians on systemic enzyme therapy in the last 30 years that it's been in use there. The death rate would have been amazing by now.
I can tell you that on 150 of the vital enzymes a day, if I give myself a B12 injection, I bleed for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I backed off.
Increase your calcium and vitamin K.
I did increase the K then.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Does it reduce blood pressure, high blood pressure?
It can under certain circumstances, and there are two reasons for high blood pressure: peripheral vascular resistance and encroaching glomerulosclerosis in the kidney. The younger folks tend to get the peripheral vascular resistance, which is where the microcirculation in the arms and the legs begins to clog up. The blood vessels, due to the inflammation, begin to grow fibrosis, and they begin to harden. They lose their patency, their expandability. So blood flow through there gets increased. Now, when we get into the encroaching glomerulosclerosis, the kidney filtering portions begin to get scarred over. So let's say these are the glomeruli, the little kidney filtering fingers. The kidney works on this basis. It has to maintain the same level of inflow and outflow in order to maintain its health. If you affect the inflow or you affect the outflow, the kidney is going to be damaged. If I covered over half of my fingers with pieces of rubber glove, so that I only had the area of exposed skin as a filtering medium, but I had to maintain the same level of inflow, what do you have to do? You've got to up the pressure. Okay? Once the glomeruli in the kidneys get glommed over with this stuff for long enough, they actually die off. But if we can eat away at the fibrosis on the glomeruli while they're still alive, if we can eat away at the fibrosis in the microcirculation, we can reduce blood pressure by reducing peripheral vascular resistance and by reducing glomerulosclerosis. And here I'll tell you a story, and I will end with this. Dr. Karl Ransberger, who owned Mucos Pharma in Munich, was diagnosed in 1970 with end-stage renal disease. He was going to be dead by 1973. The doctors all told him, you got 3 years. He didn't accept that. He would walk through his factory and pick up handfuls of his enzymes and pop them and swallow them down 5-6 times a day. Just walk up to a barrel. The enzymes come in these, they package them in these 35-gallon drums. He'd just scoop up a handful, go in and get some water, and drink them down. He'd do this a bunch of times a day. He died in June of 2001. He ate away at the scar tissue that was accruing on his kidney, and it gave him almost another 30 years. And even at that, he didn't die from kidney failure per se. He died because of a bad filter in his dialysis machine.
You mentioned Wobenzyme. Do you recommend taking Wobenzyme with your enzymes?
You can, you don't have to.
What does the Wobenzyme do?
The Wobenzyme does about what the Vitalzyme does, but let me give you the results of a study that was done at UC Irvine. They're coming up with their own natural anti-cancer therapy. And they wanted to find the strongest fibrinolytic enzyme to go with it, because one of the things that happens with cancer is that both the individual cancer cell and the tumor itself shields itself in fibrosis. It's the way that it avoids detection by the immune system. Looks like part of you. It's also a way to armor themselves against the white blood cells, the natural killer cells, and chemotherapy, anything else you can throw at it. So in Europe, they use systemic enzymes as part of conventional anti-CA therapy. So the scientists wanted to find what the strongest fibrinolytic enzyme was to couple with their upcoming natural anti-cancer work. They tried 70 brands of systemic enzymes available in the United States. Vitalzyme was number 1. German enzyme was 50. Dr. Kelly's enzyme was 3rd. And those are the only 3 rankings that I was told about. We did not know this was happening. The Vitalzyme folks didn't know this had even gone on. It was 2 other physicians who were familiar with the work who actually called me up about 6 months to a year after it happened and told me what the results of the study were.
I have a question. I have a patient that's taking, she's in the 3rd stage of Parkinson's. She's taking a lot of medication. She's got Alzheimer's. What happens with the reaction if she was to start taking this with the medications that they have her on?
Gosh, as long as they're not blood thinning meds, as long as it's not Coumadin, warfarin, Plavix, shouldn't be any detrimental effects. The systemic enzymes do increase the absorption of certain medications, especially antibiotics. Antibiotics are increased anywhere between 7 to 21%. The other meds, I don't know, and if she's that far gone, you might improve circulation, you might do a few other things, but I actually don't know what to do with a patient like that. Not my field.
Let me, I have one more question for Will, but before, let me just preface the question this way. You know, this is a great talk. Will's a wonderful guy. I'm a skeptic, though, in the sense that, you know, when you're doing pioneering medicine, you're always going to be ahead of this, even the scientific community, because people don't even know this stuff exists. They haven't started to test it. At the same time, so what you're doing is you're relying on clinical experience and you're relying on anecdotes, what you call anecdotal evidence. It's my belief that a good scientist takes anecdotal evidence as a starting point. So what I want to ask Will is, okay, now if you're looking at someone like me who's very cautious, what can you refer me to? I mean, is there any article that summarizes the research as opposed to the stories? You see,
if you go to the Mucos Pharma website, www.muc as in Charlie, OS as in Sierra, mucos.cz, Charlie Zebra, mucos.cz. Click on the English flag to get the website up in English. Then click on the 2 blue words at the bottom of the main page that say medical fields. That will take you to a page with every medical field from angiology to urology on it, to take a look at the earlier studies that were done with systemic enzyme blends and where they were done and who did them. Click on any of those fields and it will take you to the abstracts of those studies on that particular field. Mucospharma.de used to have the entire study, 160 of them, in its entirety. But Mucos ran afoul of German pharmaceutical law and a few other things happened, so they yanked that entire website off. Downloading and printing that website was like downloading and printing the Manhattan phone book 3 times over. I was like a kid being led into the candy store, you know, almost like letting me into the Library of Congress. Boy, look at all these studies, this is wonderful. But the Mucos Czechoslovakia website still has the abstracts of the studies, but not the full studies. For the rest of the studies, go to PubMed and type in serapeptase and ceaprose. Type in papain. Type in bromelain. Yes, sir?
A cyst on a pancreas. Will this be helpful?
It should, yes. We have reports of it eating away at cysts in polycystic kidney disease. I don't see why it wouldn't eat away at a cyst anywhere else, because they're all made of the same thing. regardless of what's encased inside, the exterior portion is all fibrin. So it should be able to eat away at the fibrin, yes.
What would be the dose?
3 to 5 capsules 3 times a day should work just fine.
Thank you.
Okay, time for one more question, Will?
Yes.
Okay, Will. Phil.
What about the other thing we were talking about?
I'm sorry?
What about the other thing we were going to talk about?
Oh, well, okay, well, you know, Dave wanted me to point out, now, this has been an excellent talk. We asked Will to make it an educational talk, people who are interested in the science behind the medicine, and he did that. To the extent that you can do something when, you know, you've got a new formula that is just coming out. But Dave wanted me to explain to you all that Will is associated with VitalZyme, and Jeff is too. And so, you know, but that's par for the course. I mean, we have doctors up here who have a practice too, and they're in business too. So we can't rule out everybody who's making a living doing what they're good at. But at the same time, we wanted to make it clear, just as a matter of principle, that there is that connection. So it's all the more important to be able to go to PubMed and look up serapeptase and look up these other things. And I think, you know, if those of you who have other questions about that, you can talk to Will afterwards and get more information about that. But that's a good lead. Did you want that final question, Phil?
Yes. You have not really said anything about nattokinase or lumbokinase,
Okay.
which are the premier fibrinolytic enzymes. You complete bypass them.
The lumbokinase I have no experience with, so okay, fine.
You need to admit that.
Yes, the nattokinase in tests of enzymic action is about equal with serapeptase. It depends on who does the tests. In some tests, they're slightly superior. In some tests, they're neck and neck. In some tests, they're not as strong. So a lot of it can depend on what nattokinase from who. If it's Dr. Seki, is it? Sumi's. If it's Dr. Sumi's nattokinase, very high quality, pharmaceutical grade, it will probably be the kick-ass and the equal of just about any other fibrinolytic enzyme around. And there are nattokinase blends that are about to come out that will be the cat's meow for things like cleaning out arteries. But, you know, Natto Kinase. So I restricted myself to what I have direct experience with.
But I think you should say that.
All right.
Okay, great. Hey, great talk, Will.
Thank you. Thank you.
There were 97 of us here tonight. That's an all-time record. I'd like you all to thank
Good job.
Thank you.